Hello. This is a brief retelling of the 2004 film The Girl Next Door. Let's not delay and get straight to the point. The film begins with a photo shoot for the school graduation album, during which students remember their brightest moments. Here we meet the main character, Matthew Kidman, who realizes that he has nothing to remember from school life. Then we are transported to the gym, in which Matthew says that they managed to raise enough money for the Samnang student from Cambodia was able to study at their school. Then we are introduced to his friends Baitons. They look through the windows like them classmates go to the beach. Matthew invites them to come with them, but is refused. Then he decides to go himself. Getting into the car, he leaves the school, but a police car begins to pursue him. After a short chase, the policeman gets into an accident and, closing his eyes in fright, Matthew opens them and realizes that he sits in the car and did not go anywhere. Arriving home, he notices a new car near a neighbor's house. Entering home, he sees his parents sitting with friends. They begin to discuss Matthew's admission to a prestigious university and his commencement speech. Because he needs a scholarship, because education there is very expensive. In the evening, going out into the street to take out the trash and repeating his speech, he saw near the new neighbor's car a charming blonde. He calls his friend Eli and begins to describe her. During the conversation, he looks out the window at the house opposite and sees that girl. She begins to undress, takes off almost all her clothes. But at some point, when he was looking at her, she turns around. He has to hide under the window. When he looked out from under it, she was gone. But then he hears a sound outside and sees her walking towards their house. She rings the doorbell and starts talking to his parents. Whereupon they call him to come down. When he comes down, his parents introduce him to a new neighbor, Dennis. And they say that she came from Los Angeles to look after her aunt's house. Parents offer Matthew to show her the city. And now they're driving down the street, but Danny stops the car abruptly and asks Matthew, did he like it spy on her? He starts making excuses and apologizing. Then she says it's not enough and wants him to undress. He refuses. But in the next scene, we see him standing in his shorts, in front of the headlights of a car. But this is not enough. Then he takes off his underpants and throws them on the ground. At this moment, she presses on the gas and picks up his underpants and leaves. Further, we see how Matthew runs along the road, hiding behind a children's inflated circle. Daniel drives up to him and lets him into the car. They sit in a cafe and Matthew asks her what she does when she's not torturing people. She says she quit her job and wants to start over. Then Matthew asks if she has a boyfriend? To which Daniel replies that he doesn't and says that Matthew is in his senior year and is probably hanging out with Mike in Maine. But when he begins to lie ridiculously, she realizes that in fact this is not so. And says that she will find him a girl who will make him laugh and push him to do incredible things. After which she hands him a drawing on which she is drawn. When they arrived at the house, confusion arose between them, and he left, wishing her good night. In the next scene we see him discussing with his friends yesterday evening. His friend Eli says he would sleep with her. To which Matthew replies that he is not and says that he was in the wrong mood, but understands that he should have kissed her. Sitting in class, he looks out the window and sees Danielle, who calls him to run away from school. Not long hesitating, he leaves and on the go jumps into her car. They are leaving school. Then he talks about a guy they raised money for so he could go to their school. Daniel tells him to follow her and takes him to some house. And then runs off into the darkness. Following her, he saw her undressing near the pool in a strange yard. He begins to dissuade her, but seeing her naked, he also takes off his clothes and enters the pool. They swim, and she asks about what crazy things he did. To which Matthew says it comes first. They are going to kiss, but the lights go on in the street and they see them swimming in the headmaster's pool. He wants to run away, but Danny says whatever happens. After that, the principal of the school notices someone in the pool and looks out into the street, sees only how they run away. In the next scene, to the house where Matthew's friends Eli and Klitz live. Danny rings the doorbell and says she's all wet and can she come in? They look lost before the speech. Matthew appears and introduces his girlfriend. They all go to the party together. Everyone is paying attention to them. Matthew's classmate, Hunter, approaches them. He offers to bring a drink, at which point another guy pulls Matthew aside and tells him to leave. But he goes to Danny and kisses her. Further, we see how Matthew walks through the school. Eli runs up to him. He takes him to the school studio and shows him a cassette of an adult film starring Danielle. Looking at a small piece, he turns around and leaves. Eli runs for him, trying to calm him down. Tells him to take her to a motel and sleep with her. To which Matthew says that he actually likes her. He arrives home and sees his mother and Danielle in the hallway. They look at his old photos. They start talking, but seeing her, he can't get the tape out of his head. Imagining her lashing out at his parents. He can't stand it and screams. Matthew and Daniel enter his room. The girl asks what happened. To which he says he doesn't feel well. She says they can go another time. But he says no. They are in a car. He, on the advice of Eli, does not pay attention to her and tries to get her drunk. Arriving at the motel, Matthew offers to rent a room, to which he receives a positive response. Entering the room, the girl lays down on the bed and begins to undress. She starts acting like an adult movie actress. And Matthew asks why is she doing this? To which she says that he wanted to sleep with an actress in a cheap hotel. After which she leaves. He runs after her and asks why she didn't tell him. To which she says that she liked the way he looked at her. Daniel leaves. After her departure, we see that Matthew's life does not please him. He looks out the window from the classroom, hoping to see Dennis, but she's not there. Matthew comes to her house and says that he saw the film and lost his head, that the main thing for him is her. But at that moment he sees another guy coming out of the room. She asks to talk about it later and Matthew leaves the house. But turning around, he sees that guy coming out of the house. He says his name is Kelly. He asks if he and Danny are friends. To which Matthew says that they how to meet. After that, Daniel comes out of the house and says that they have to go. Kelly invites Matthew to come with them. Despite Dennis' protests, he agrees. And they go to a strip club. There, at the table, Kelly begins to ask Matthew about the future. Matthew is already asking how they know each other? To which he receives the answer that he is a producer and Danny's ex-boyfriend. Matthew tries to be cool, but Danny breaks down and goes to the bathroom. At the club, he notices a friend from the family who often comes to their house with his wife. Kelly calls him to them and suggests that he buy Matthew a dance. Then we see Matthew, Klitz and Eli sitting in a sex education class watching a video. Eli says it sucks and he could do better. Then they walk down the street and see Kelly talking to the girls from the school. Coming up to them, Kelly introduces them, after which they leave and get into the car. They go to the bank, where the money for the arrival of Samnang is kept. Matthew presents Kelly as a school teacher and he begins to care for a bank employee. When he gets home, he sees Kelly and Daniel getting into the car. They are go to Vegas for the festival. After which Matthew asks Danny, how is it that she wanted to start all over again? She says that you can't run away from yourself and leaves. Matthew, Eli and Klitz are sitting in a cafe. Matthew says it's his fault for not taking her to that motel and Eli agrees. He decides to follow her to Vegas for an adult film festival. They go inside and on one of the catwalks Matthew notices Danielle. He passes through the crowd and calls her, saying that it is he who is to blame for everything. She looks at him and leaves the stage. Matthew tries to catch up with her, but she tells him to leave her alone. At this point, she meets one of the producers she was filming with, and he says that she should be with him, not with Kelly. But then Kelly comes up and sends him to hell. Matthew walks up to them and says that Daniel doesn't want to be there, but she tells him to go home and leaves, and Kelly takes him outside and tells him to stay away from her. But Matthew returns to look for the dentist, while Eli and Klitz remain seated in the hall for the time being. One of the actresses sits next to them and Eli says that they are directors. She wants them to cast her in their film. Then her friend the bull comes up and, having learned that they are directors, invites them to touch her. Eli refuses, but Klitz agrees. But a guard comes up who saw them before and says that they are just schoolchildren. They start to run away, meeting Matthew on the way, who is looking at Danielle and Kelly. They say to run and run away. But Matthew goes to Danny and says that he knows what she really is, gives her a piece of paper with her portrait, and leaves. In the morning he sits in his room, but there is a knock on the door. He turns to see Danielle, who offers to take him to school. She asks why he believes in her so much, to which she receives the answer that he is a fool. They kiss and he leaves, but comes back and asks, will she go to prom with him? Dennis agrees. He is sitting in class, preparing a speech for the evening, but he sees Kelly outside the door, who bursts into the classroom and starts yelling that he will not let Danny leave. He takes Matthew's jacket and is escorted out of class. They go to the car where the guys from the school are already waiting for them. Kelly throws one of them away and they all run away. He takes Matthew out of town and says that Dennis did not come to the shooting and he got on the money. Then she punches him in the face, but then apologizes and gives him a pain pill. They walk through the woods and he tells how Hugo stole the idea from him and that the reward he received should be his. So they will steal it and only then will he forgive the debt. Entering the house and dispersing each in different directions, Kelly goes out and calls the police. When Matthew found the reward, Hugo saw him and set a parrot on him. Ran out of the house. He saw how Kelly was leaving and the police were coming. Hiding in the bushes, he dialed Klitz. When they got home they realized that the pill Kelly had given was drug. They took Danny out of the house and on the way to the graduation party they tried to calm Matthew down. Entering the hall of the building, Danny asked Matthew not to talk or draw attention to herself. But he didn't succeed very well. Going up to the table of his competitors, he kissed the girl who was sitting there, and then danced and hugged the director. And at the speech of one of the participants, the whole room laughed. When it was his time to speak, he realized that he could not read what was written on his cards. Having said, come what may, he decided to improvise and won applause with his performance. But did not receive a scholarship. Arriving later at the bank to pick up the money for the arrival of the Samnang, Matthew finds out that Kelly has already taken them. The bank employee is about to inform the manager, but Matthew begs her not to tell anyone. She gives him until Monday. Matthew runs to Danielle's house, tells her what happened and tells her about his plan how to find money by Monday. After which he goes to Eli and Klitz. Eli immediately agrees, but Klitz does not want to, but they persuade him. Further on, Danny and Matthew meet her actress girlfriends at the airport and return the award to Hugo. Then they agree that if they succeed, they will receive money. Before graduation, Matthew, Klitz and Eli, along with the film crew, visit Danielle's house. He introduces boys to their girlfriends at prom. Entering the hall, they draw everyone's attention to themselves. When asked by the teacher why they need cameras, Matthew says that they are making a video magazine. After Eli says it's time to set up the scenery and they leave. When Matthew stays with Danny, the guys from the school come up to them and start asking about the girls. They ask him to introduce them, to which Matthew invites them to act in films. The guys agree and Matthew lets them sign agreement. But on the way one of the guys loses it. After leading them to the classroom where the shooting will take place, Matthew returns to hall where they dance. At this time, Eli and the team run around the school to another location. During the dance, the teacher comes up with an agreement that they lost, but Matthew says he doesn't know what it is. Then one of the operators comes up to them and says that they have a problem. One of the actors failed to make his sword hard and therefore one of them should act in this scene. Matthew says he will do it, but when he was about to leave the locker room, he saw a lipstick mark that Danny had left. Remembering all the wonderful moments with her, he changed his mind. And then Klitz agreed. After they left the school, got into a limousine and began to celebrate. Dropping off Klitz and Eli, they drove through the city at night and made love. Walking home in the morning, Eli called him and said that the film was gone. Upon entering the house, Matthew saw his parents at the table with the director and Kelly, who had a cassette in his hands. Kelly asked to speak to Matthew alone. He said it was his idea and then his cassette, and if Matthew does not agree, he will show it to his parents, but Matthew says he doesn't care anymore. When Kelly turned on the tape, it turned out to be a sex education lesson. Kelly didn't expect this. Matthew's parents, along with the director, supported this idea. After we return to the stage, where the students remember their highlights and Matthew remembers his friends. Hugo, who appears on television. Kelly, to whom he sent a box of cigars. Samnang, who came to America. Ella, who speaks in front of the audience. Klitza, and his big debut. That he himself paid for his studies, as well as his charming neighbor. Thanks for watching the video. Write in the comments how you like the movie, And do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Bye everyone.